Before we start, if you enjoyed the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The plasma bolt scorched past Zyra's shoulder, close enough that she felt her skin blister beneath the scales. She dove behind a rusted coolant processor, her tail whipping around to steady her landing. 3 magazines left. The math didn't favor survival. Zyra Vesh, Kratha's voice echoed through the abandoned refinery. 6 months I've hunted you. 6 months you've made me look weak. She pressed her back against the corroded metal, feeling the thrum of failing machinery through her spine. Blood, her blood, dark green and too much of it, pooled beneath her left thigh where shrapnel had buried itself deep. Her secondary eyelids flicked across her vision, calculating trajectories. 15 enforcers minimum. 1 exit. 0 chance. Come out, and I'll make it quick, Krath continued. His footsteps rang against the metal catwalks above. You know our laws. You're still mine, Zyra. Her fingers tightened around her weapon. The mate bond laws of her people were absolute, engineered into their genetics millennia ago when their species had decided emotion was inefficient. Krath had claimed her young, before she'd understood what it meant. A shadow moved to her left. She fired twice, rewarded by the thud of a body hitting the floor. 14. She could still see Garrett Cole's face as she'd sealed the airlock 6 months ago. The shock in his gray eyes as she'd left him bleeding on that backwater moon, taking their score in his ship. Not anger, just bewilderment, like he couldn't comprehend what she was doing even as she did it. Another enforcer rounded the corner. She shot him through the throat. 13. Her tactical display showed reinforcements converging from 3 directions. The shrapnel in her leg sent white-hot spikes of pain up her spine with every heartbeat. She'd lose consciousness in minutes from blood loss. Every logical calculation led to the same conclusion: she was going to die here. You made me look like a fool, Zyra, Krath called out. Took an outsider as a partner. A human. Do you know what the clan said? She leaned out, fired 3 rounds toward the catwalks. Someone yelped. Her vision blurred at the edges. The loading dock entrance was 20 meters away. She'd never make it. Her leg wouldn't support a sprint, and the moment she broke cover, they'd cut her down. She checked her magazine. 17 rounds. Not enough for all of them, but enough to make sure Krath didn't take her alive. She'd save the last one for herself. Final offer, Zyra, Kratha's voice dropped to something almost gentle. Come out now. We'll go home, resume our bond. Her lip curled back from her teeth. Home. As if she'd ever had one. She braced herself to make the run, knowing it was suicide. Her muscles coiled, then every light in the refinery went out, emergency strips flickered on, bathing everything in crimson. When the red glow stabilized, there was someone standing in the loading dock entrance. Zyra's breath caught. Garrett Cole stood silhouetted against the corridor beyond. His posture relaxed in a way that screamed danger. He wore the same battered tactical gear she remembered, but there were new scars on his face, a vicious line running from his left temple to his jaw, another crossing his throat. His gray eyes found her across the space. He didn't have a weapon drawn. Who the hell? One of Kratha's enforcers started. Garrett moved. His hand snapped out, caught the enforcer's wrist mid-swing, and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the refinery. Before the enforcer hit the ground, Garrett had his sidearm and put rounds through 2 more targets. Cole, Kratha's voice came from above, delighted and venomous. You saved me the trouble of hunting you down. Garrett didn't acknowledge him. He was already moving through the space, putting down enforcers with brutal efficiency. Each movement precise, no wasted motion. His eyes flicked to Zyra. Can you walk? He asked. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much in the months since she'd seen him. What are you doing here? The words came out sharper than she intended. Settling a debt. He shot an enforcer who tried to flank him, didn't even turn his head to do it. I left you to die, she said. Her vision swam. Took everything. Your ship. The credits. All of it. I know. That was it. Just I know. No anger, no demands for explanation. He fired twice more, dropped behind a support pillar as return fire chewed into the metal. Then why, tracked your distress beacon, he said. Partnerships still got unpaid accounts. Kill him. Kraith screamed from above. Kill them both. The remaining enforcers converged, and suddenly Garrett was beside her, his shoulder against hers as they both opened fire. The familiar rhythm came back instantly, her predatory reflexes covering his blind spots, his tactical awareness directing her aim. They'd run 50 jobs together, her tail lashed out instinctively, wrapping around his forearm to steady his aim as he took down an enforcer. The touch sent heat racing up her spine, her species' physiological response to trusted contact in combat. She jerked her tail back like it had touched fire. Storage corridor, 30 meters, Garrett said, ejecting a spent magazine. Access tunnel to the docking bays. Can you make it? No, she admitted. The shrapnel had shifted, grinding against bone. Maybe. Good enough. He moved, and she followed because there wasn't another choice. Her leg screamed with every step, but his hand was suddenly under her arm, taking her weight without comment. They ran as plasma fire chewed through the space behind them. Kraith's roar of rage echoed through the refinery. The storage corridor was narrow, forcing them single file. Zyra's blood left a smeared trail on the floor. She could hear shouts, footsteps. They weren't going to make it. Why did you come back? She gasped. They'd reached a sealed blast door. Garrett was already working the manual override. He glanced at her, and for just a moment. She saw past the scars and the hardness to the partner she'd abandoned. Because you needed help, he said simply. The blast door groaned open. Beyond it, the docking bay stretched out, and their only chance at survival. I don't understand, she whispered. You don't have to. He pulled her through. And the door sealed behind them with a hydraulic hiss. In the distance, she could hear Kraith's enforcers trying to force it open. They had minutes. Garrett's gray eyes met hers in the dim light of the docking bay, and she saw something there that her species had engineered out of themselves millennia ago. Something that made no logical sense: loyalty. Not because of laws or bonds or genetics, but because he'd chosen it. Come on, he said, already moving toward a docked ship. We're not done yet. And despite everything, the betrayal, the blood, the impossibility of what he'd just done, Zyra found herself following him. Because for the first time in 6 months, she wasn't running alone. The ship Garrett had chosen was a compact freighter, probably stolen given how quickly he bypassed the security locks. Zyra limped up the ramp, her tail dragging behind her as her leg finally gave out. She caught herself against the bulkhead, leaving a green smear on the metal. Sit, Garrett said. Gesturing to the co-pilot's seat as the ramp sealed behind them, she collapsed into it as he dropped into the pilot's chair and brought the engines online. The docking clamps released with a metallic clang. Through the viewport, she could see figures spilling into the bay, Kraith's enforcers, weapons raised. Garrett punched the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, scraping against the docking arm with a screech of tearing metal. Plasma fire splashed across their shields. He rolled the ship hard left, threading through the narrow bay exit. And suddenly they were in open space. Strap in, he said, the station's defense grid lit up. Tracking vectors appearing on the tactical display. Garrett's fingers flew across the controls, plotting a jump coordinate straight through the station's debris field. You're insane, she managed. Probably. He fired the main engines. The freighter accelerated hard, crushing her back into the seat. Debris pinged off the hull as they wove through twisted metal. A defense turret locked onto them. Garrett dropped the ship 10 meters, rolled inverted, and the turret's fire tracked through empty space. Behind them, 2 pursuit craft launched from the station. "Jump drive needs 3 minutes to charge," Garrett said, his voice calm. "Hold on." He pushed the freighter into a spiral, using a chunk of station hull as cover. One pursuer overshot, tried to correct. Garrett put a missile into its engines and it tumbled away. The second hung back, trying to force them into a predictable path. The second pursuer got a targeting lock. Alarms screamed through the cockpit. Garrett cut thrust entirely, let momentum carry them forward while he rotated the ship. The pursuer's fire went wide. Before they could reacquire, he'd fired thrusters again, changing vectors. 90 seconds. "Why did you cover for me?" Zyra asked. The words came out without permission. "After I took everything." Garrett's jaw tightened. He didn't look at her, focused on flying. "Reported the ship as salvage," he said after a moment. "Told command you'd been killed in the firefight. Paid back the crew shares myself." "Why?" "Because I knew you were running from something." 60 seconds, the pursuer was closing now, realizing Garrett's jump drive was charging. They'd never let them complete the sequence. "I could have gotten you killed," she said. "Left you bleeding with 3 gut wounds and no way off that moon. But you didn't." "I tried to." "I know." 30 seconds, the tactical display showed the pursuer's weapons charging for a kill shot. Their shields wouldn't hold. Garrett was still flying like they had all the time in the world, making minute adjustments. "You should have let me die back there," Zyra whispered. "Should have left me for Kraith." He looked at her. Those gray eyes held something she couldn't name. "Not how this works," he said. 10 seconds, the pursuer fired. Garrett rolled the ship, angling the reinforced cargo bay to take the hit. The impact threw them sideways, alarms screaming, but the hull held. The jump drive whined as it reached critical charge. "Hold on," Garrett said again, space twisted. The stars stretched into lines of light, and suddenly the station, the pursuers, Kraith, all of it vanished into the folded distance of hyperspace. The cockpit fell silent except for the steady hum of the engines and Zyra's ragged breathing. She slumped in her seat. Every muscle going liquid with exhaustion and blood loss. Garrett was already out of his seat, pulling a med kit from the emergency locker. He knelt beside her, his hands moving to the shrapnel in her thigh without asking permission. "This is going to hurt," he said. "Everything hurts." His fingers probed the wound, careful despite their size. Zyra hissed as he found the shrapnel's edge. Her species healed fast, but only if foreign objects were removed first. He knew that. Remembered that from all those jobs they'd run together. "On 3, he said. 1, he pulled on 1, the bastard. Zyra's vision went white. Her tail lashed out instinctively, wrapping around his arm, squeezing hard. But his other hand was already spraying synth skin over the wound, sealing it. "Warned you," he said. "You said 3. Would have been worse if you'd tensed up." Her tail was still wrapped around his forearm, the scaled length coiled tight. She should release him. But the pain was fading to a manageable throb, and his warmth seeped through her scales in a way that made something in her chest loosened. He didn't try to pull away. Just finished treating the wound with her tail wrapped around him. "The shoulder too," he said, gesturing to where plasma fire had clipped her. Zyra shifted, giving him access. His hands moved to the burned scales, cleaning away the charred flesh with practiced efficiency. Every touch sent heat racing through her again, her body's involuntary response to trusted contact. Except nothing about this felt involuntary. You tracked my distress beacon, she said quietly. For 6 months? Programmed in alert. In case you ever needed help. That's insane. That's the second time you've said that. Because it's true. She watched him work. I betrayed you. Took everything and ran. You should hate me. Don't really do hate, Garrett said. He sealed the shoulder wound, sat back on his heels. Not productive. Then what do you do? He met her eyes. Try to understand, he said simply. Zyra's tail tightened involuntarily around his arm. She'd spent 6 months running, convinced that what she'd done was unforgivable. But here was Garrett Cole, with new scars she'd caused, looking at her like she was worth understanding. Craith, she started, then stopped. The words tangled in her throat. The crime lord, Garrett said. Not a question. My mate. Under my species' laws. The admission felt like swallowing glass. He claimed me when I was young. I didn't understand what it meant until it was too late. Garrett's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. The job we were running, Zyra continued. The one where the bounty was supposed to be my way out. Enough credits to buy my freedom under clan law. But when you got hit, when you went down, I panicked. Decided it was safer to run than risk Craith finding out I'd failed. So you left me bleeding and took the score, Garrett said. Yes. To buy your freedom. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. His arm was warm beneath her tail, solid and real. Didn't work, Garrett observed. No, Zyra said bitterly. Craith found out anyway. Now he'll hunt me until one of us is dead. Then we kill him first. The certainty in his voice made her laugh, a harsh sound. You don't understand. Craith commands half the underworld in 3 sectors. He's got ships, resources, connections, don't care. Garrett, he's hunting you, Garrett said, and there was something cold in his voice now. That makes him a problem. Problems get solved. Zyra stared at him. Her species had abandoned this kind of thinking millennia ago. When faced with a superior threat, logic dictated retreat. But Garrett was looking at her like fighting Craith was the most obvious solution in the universe. You really are insane, she whispered. That's 3 times, he said. Starting to think you're impressed. Despite everything, she laughed. It bubbled up from somewhere deep, genuine and unexpected. His mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile, her tail was still wrapped around his arm. She became abruptly, intensely aware of the fact. Of how close they were in the cramped cockpit. I don't understand you, she said softly. My species would have written me off as a bad investment. But you came back. Yes. Why? Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then his free hand moved, carefully. His fingers brushed her jaw. Traced the line of scales there. Because some debts can't be settled with credits. He said, the heat that spread through her at those words had nothing to do with physiology and everything to do with the human sitting in front of her. The one who'd tracked her distress beacon for 6 months. Who'd walked into an ambush to save her, she should say something. But words felt inadequate, so instead she let her tail coil tighter, pulling him fractionally closer. We're going to die trying to fight Craith, she said. Probably. You're okay with that? His thumb traced her cheekbone. Been in worse spots, he said. Had worse company. The jump drive hummed around them. Somewhere behind them, Kraith would be organizing pursuit, but for the first time in 6 months, Zyra wasn't running alone. Get some rest, Garrett said finally, pulling back with what looked like effort. Got a few hours before we drop out of hyperspace. We'll figure out the next move then. Zyra wanted to argue, to keep talking, to make sense of whatever was building between them. But exhaustion crashed over her. She nodded, releasing her tail from his arm with reluctance as she settled back into the co-pilot's seat. She watched him return to the controls. His scarred profile illuminated by the instrument lights, sleep pulled at her, and for once, she let it come without fighting. Zyra woke to the sound of alarms and Garrett's hands on her shoulders, shaking her gently but urgently. We've got company, he said. She snapped awake instantly, her predatory reflexes kicking in. Through the viewport, 3 ships hung in the black, sleek interceptors bearing Kraith's insignia. They dropped out of hyperspace directly into an ambush. How did they track her? Garrett said grimly. He was already at the controls, bringing weapons online. Must have tagged us during the station fight. The lead interceptor's calm crackled to life. Kraith's voice filled the cockpit, smooth and venomous. Clever, Cole. But predictable. Did you really think I wouldn't find her? Garrett didn't respond, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. Their freighter was outgunned and outmaneuvered. Zyra, Kraith continued. Come home. I'll even let your human friend live if you surrender now. She remembered exactly how well Kraith kept his word. The scars on her back testified to that. Not happening, she said, loud enough for the comm to pick up. Kraith's laugh was oil slick. Then watch him die first. The interceptors opened fire. Garrett threw the freighter into a hard dive, but plasma raked across their dorsal shields. Warning lights screamed. He returned fire, but the interceptors were too fast. They scattered and reformed, circling like predators. Ideas would be good right about now, Garrett said. Zyra's mind raced. 3 against 1. No backup. Shields at 60% and dropping. The logical choice was surrender, except she'd seen what was in Garrett's eyes when he'd found her in that refinery. The certainty. The choice he'd made to come back despite every rational reason not to. There, she said, pointing to a nearby asteroid field on the NAV display. Dense mineral composition. Their sensors won't track as well. We won't either. I know. Garrett looked at her for a heartbeat, then nodded. He punched the engines, pushing the freighter toward the asteroids at maximum burn. The interceptors followed. They hit the field at speed that made Zyra's teeth ache. Garrett wove between tumbling rocks, each one large enough to pulverize them. Behind them, the interceptors slowed, trying to maintain targeting locks through the interference. Port side. Coming in low, Zyra called out, reading the distorted sensor data. Garrett rolled the ship, putting a massive asteroid between them and the attacker. Plasma fire scorched rock, sending fragments spinning into the black. He was already moving, threading through a gap that looked impossibly narrow. Another interceptor appeared on their starboard, firing. Garrett killed thrust, let momentum carry them forward while the ship tumbled. The plasma passed through empty space. Before the interceptor could correct, they'd rotated and Garrett fired everything they had. The interceptor's shields flared, held, but the pilot broke off. 2 more, Garrett said. Shields at 40%. They couldn't keep this up. Zyra's claws dug into the armrests as Garrett pushed the freighter through another maneuver, then she saw it. A canyon carved into one of the larger asteroids, narrow, winding, barely wider than their ship. There, she said. If we can get them to follow us in, they'll have to come single file, Garrett finished. Even the odds. He didn't hesitate, just aimed for the canyon mouth and dove in. The walls rushed past, close enough that she could see the pockmarked surface. Behind them, the two remaining interceptors followed, the canyon twisted. Garrett followed every curve. The interceptors were faster, closing the gap. One got a targeting lock. Alarms shrieked. Brace, Garrett said. He killed the engines entirely. The freighter slowed dramatically, and suddenly the lead interceptor was right on top of them, too close, unable to fire without destroying itself. The pilot tried to pull up. Garrett fired the dorsal thrusters. The freighter jumped up, slamming into the interceptor's underbelly. Metal screamed. The interceptor careened into the canyon wall and exploded. One left, Zyra breathed. Shields at 20%. The final interceptor was hanging back now, cautious. They emerged from the canyon into open space, and Zyra saw why. 3 more ships had arrived, bigger ones, heavy cruisers. Kraith had called in reinforcements. "We're done," she said quietly. Garrett stared at the tactical display. His jaw was set, and she recognized that expression. He was calculating, refusing to accept the math. "Garrett," she said softly. "It's over. Let me go. Surrender me to Kraith. He'll let you live." "No. You can't fight 6 ships. Don't care. I'm not worth dying for," she said, and something in her chest cracked. "I left you bleeding. Betrayed you." He turned to look at her then, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "You think that's what this is about?" he asked. "Some tally of debts? Then what?" His hand moved to her face, fingers tracing scales with a tenderness that made her want to break. "You were running from someone who owned you," he said quietly. "You made a choice in panic, trying to survive. That doesn't make you worthless." "I don't understand," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Your species engineered out the parts that let you. But humans? We're stupidly loyal to the people we care about. Even when it doesn't make sense. The people we care about." Zyra's tail moved without conscious thought, wrapping around his wrist. Not for balance this time, but because she needed to touch him. "I care about you too," she said, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff. "I ran because I was terrified of what that meant. What Kraith would do if he knew." Garrett's thumb brushed her cheek. "Then let's make sure he doesn't get the chance," he said. "How?" He looked back at the tactical display, at the 6 ships closing in. Then his expression shifted. "The tracker," he said. "If we can get it off our ship, put it on something else," Zyra finished. "Lead them somewhere they don't want to go." "There's a coalition patrol route 2 jumps from here," Garrett said. "Heavy presence. If we can get Kraith's ships to follow a false signal into their space, they'll engage. Kraith's wanted by the coalition." It was insane. It required them to find the tracker, remove it, attach it to something else, and launch it, all while 6 hostile ships closed in, but Garrett was already moving. Heading for the airlock with a toolkit. "Find it on external sensors," he called back. "I'll do an EVA and remove it. You'll be exposed. Then fly evasive and keep them busy." He was at the airlock now, sealing his flight suit. 6 months ago, she'd left this man to die. Now he was about to walk into open space while enemy ships closed in, trusting her to keep him alive. "Garrett," she said. He paused, looked back. She wanted to tell him a dozen things. That she was sorry. That she understood now what loyalty meant. That the warmth spreading through her chest wasn't just physiology, instead. She said what mattered most. Don't die out there. His mouth quirked in that almost smile. Not planning on it. Then he was cycling the airlock. And Zyra was alone in the cockpit with 6 hostile ships bearing down. Through the viewport, she could see Garrett maglocked to the hull. Moving toward the stern where sensors had picked up the tracker's signal, the nearest cruiser fired a warning shot across their bow. Last chance. Zyra, Kratha's voice crackled through the calm. Come home, or watch him die in the vacuum. Her tail coiled tight around the control stick. Her secondary eyelids flicked across her vision, calculating vectors. For 6 months, she'd run from Krath because logic said he was too powerful to fight, but she wasn't alone anymore. You want me? She said into the calm. Come get me. She punched the engines and dove straight toward the nearest cruiser, weapons hot. The cruiser scattered, not expecting her to attack. She rolled the freighter, laying down covering fire that forced them to break formation. Got it, Garrett's voice came through her helmet calm. Attaching it to debris now. Hurry, she said, barely avoiding plasma. Done. Get me back inside. Zyra brought the ship around, forcing the airlock toward Garrett's position. The cruisers had regrouped, weapons charging. They either made the jump in the next 30 seconds or they never made it. Garrett sealed the airlock behind him. She was already plotting jump coordinates. Launching debris, Garrett said, back in the cockpit. On the tactical display, a piece of hull plating tumbled away, the tracker broadcasting. They're following it, Zyra breathed, the jump drive whined. 15 seconds. Kratha's ships were splitting their attention between the freighter and the debris signature point. 10 seconds. Zyra's hand found Garrett's, squeezed tight. He squeezed back, space folded, and they were gone. They dropped out of hyperspace in the shadow of a dead moon, engines running cold. Zyra's hands trembled on the controls as she powered down to minimal life support. Through the viewport, the stars were cold and distant. Think it worked? She asked. Garrett was already at the sensor station, scanning for pursuit. No signatures. They followed the tracker into coalition space. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her tail unwound from where it had been coiled tight around the armrest. How long before they realize? Depends on how long the coalition keeps them busy, Garrett said. He pulled up a star chart. We need to move fast either way. Krath won't make the same mistake twice. Zyra watched him work, this human who just helped her escape certain death for the second time in as many days. His profile was sharp in the dim cockpit light, the scar on his jaw a visible reminder of what her choices had cost him. We can't keep running, she said quietly. No, Garrett agreed. He turned to face her. We can't. So what do we do? His gray eyes held hers. We end it. Permanently. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Krath commanded resources that made their stolen freighter look like a toy. Going after him directly was suicide, but Zyra found herself nodding. How? Garrett pulled up a data file on the console. A space station appeared, massive and ornate. Kratha's hosting a summit in 4 days, he said. All the major underworld players in 3 sectors. He's been planning it for months, wants to consolidate power. Security will be extreme, Zyra said, studying the station's layout. Every entrance monitored. His personal guard, plus whatever muscle the other crime lords bring. Which means everyone's expecting trouble from outside, Garrett said. Not from inside. She looked at him sharply. You want to infiltrate the summit. Walk in the front door, he corrected. As guests. They'll kill us the moment they identify us. If they identify us, Garrett said. He pulled up another file, credentials for a mid-level arms dealer and his associate. Took these off a smuggler 2 years back. Never used them. Clean, and the dealer's been out of circulation long enough that no one will question it. Zyra studied the credentials, her mind already working through the angles. It could work. The summit would be chaotic, hundreds of attendees, deals being struck in every corner. If they could blend in, get close to Kraith without triggering alarms, and once we're inside? She asked. Garrett's expression went cold. We kill him. Publicly. Make sure everyone knows he's dead. That'll start a war. Every clan will scramble for his territory. Good, Garrett said flatly. Let them tear each other apart. You'll be free of the mate bond. It was brutal. Efficient. Looking at Garrett's scarred face, seeing the determination there. Zyra realized he'd been thinking about this since the moment she told him about Kraith. We'll need weapons, she said. Something that can get past security scanners. There's a black market dealer on the station we're heading to now, Garrett said. Owes me a favor. She can get us what we need. Zyra's tail coiled slowly. You make it sound simple. It's not, Garrett admitted. But neither was getting off that refinery station. We're still here. She reached out, her clawed hand covering his on the console. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. Really? Not the debt. Why? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. His hand turned beneath hers, fingers threading between her claws. Because when I tracked your distress beacon, he said finally, and saw you were in trouble, the only thing I could think was that I wasn't going to lose you again. Not to Kraith. Not to anyone. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her heart was pounding, and heat spread through her scales where their hands touched. Garrett, I know what you're going to say, he interrupted gently. That your species doesn't work like this. That the mate bond is biological, not chosen. That what I'm feeling doesn't make sense. Does it? She whispered. Make sense to you? He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Not even a little. But I stopped trying to make sense of it somewhere around the third time I checked that distress beacon and hoped you'd call. Zyra's breath caught. She'd spent 6 months running, convincing herself she was protecting him by staying away. And he'd spent 6 months waiting for her to need him. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Her tail wrapped around his wrist. My people, we don't choose. We're claimed or we're alone. I don't know what it means to want someone. Then we figure it out together, Garrett said simply. He stood, pulling her up with him. In the cramped cockpit, they were close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. His free hand came up to her face, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. After we deal with Kraith, he said quietly, you'll be free. Free to choose. And if you choose to leave, to go your own way, I'll accept that. And if I choose to stay? The words came out barely above a whisper, his gray eyes searched hers. Then I'd spend every day making sure you never regretted it. Zyra's control cracked. She closed the distance between them, her forehead pressing against his chest. His arms came around her immediately. I'm terrified, she admitted into his shirt. Of Kraith. Of this. Of wanting something I was never supposed to have. I know, Garrett said. His hand moved to her hair, fingers careful. But you're not alone in it anymore. She pulled back enough to look up at him. This human who'd turned back for her. who'd covered for her betrayal and tracked her beacon and walked into an ambush without hesitation. "Kiss me," she said. Garrett went very still. "Zyra, please," she said. "I need to know what choosing feels like." He studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have satisfied him, because he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind. When his lips finally brushed hers, it was gentle, questioning. She answered by pressing closer, her tail wrapping around his waist to pull him against her. The kiss deepened, and heat flooded through her, not the biological response to combat, but something far more intense. His hands moved to her back, careful of her scales but firm. And she made a sound low in her throat. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrett's eyes had darkened. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice rough. "Long day tomorrow. Need to contact that dealer, plan the approach." Zyra nodded, though her tail was still wrapped around him, reluctant to let go. He was right. They had 4 days to prepare for something that would likely get them both killed. They needed to be sharp, but as they made their way to the crew quarters, his hand found hers, fingers intertwining with her claws. And when they settled into the narrow bunks, separate, because the ship only had singles, she could still feel the ghost of his touch on her scales. "Garrett?" she called softly into the darkness. "Yeah. Thank you for coming back." There was a pause, then his voice, warm and certain. "Always." Zyra closed her eyes, her tail curled around herself. In 4 days, they'd walk into Krath's summit and try to kill a crime lord. The odds weren't good. The plan was barely formed. Everything could go wrong, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing it alone. And the human in the bunk across from her had just promised her something her own species never could. Choice. She fell asleep with that thought warming her from the inside. Out, the summit station was everything Zyra had feared. Criminals mingled beneath glittering chandeliers while she adjusted the holographic disguise projector at her wrist. Dulling her green skin to gray, Garrett stood beside her, transformed by his own projector. Only his eyes remained the same gray. "Credentials," the security officer demanded. Garrett handed over the forged documents. The officer scanned them, then waved them through. "Stay close," Garrett murmured. "We need eyes on Krath before we move." Through the crowd, Zyra caught sight of him. Krath stood on a raised platform, surrounded by bodyguards. His eyes scanning the room with proprietary confidence, her tail twitched beneath the projector's disguise. Garrett's hand found the small of her back. "Breathe. You've got this." "The balcony overlook," she said, studying the architecture. Clear line of sight and exit route through the service corridors. They slipped through the crowd toward the balcony access. Garrett spoke with the guard, credits changed hands, and they climbed quickly above the crowd now. Zyra pulled the ceramic blade from its concealed sheath. "One throw." "Wait," Garrett said. "Rask is moving toward Krath." Then Krath's head turned. His eyes locked onto the balcony. Onto them. "He knows," Zyra breathed. Krath said something to Rask, who began barking orders. Enforcers converged on the balcony stairs. Garrett pulled a charge from his jacket, slapped it against the service corridor door lock. "Zyra Vesh," Krath's voice boomed through the hall. "Did you really think you could hide from me? I own you. The mate bond is eternal." Something in Zyra snapped. Not fear, rage. "No," she said. "I'm not." She raised the blade and threw. It spun through the air toward Krath's chest. Rask stepped in front of him. The blade took the lieutenant in the shoulder. He went down, but Krath was untouched. The charge detonated. "Run!" Garrett grabbed her hand. They ran through maintenance passages, alarms blaring. Lockdown protocols engaging. The cargo bay, Garrett said. Before they seal the outer doors, an enforcer appeared ahead. Garrett ducked under plasma fire and dropped him with brutal efficiency. The cargo bay door appeared, still open but closing. Garrett reached the gap first, hand outstretched. Zyra lunged, and he pulled her through as the door sealed. Plasma fire erupted. Kraith stepped through a side entrance with a dozen enforcers. Nowhere left to run, he called out. Garrett's hand found hers. Together? Together. They sprinted for a transport vessel. Garrett provided covering fire. An enforcer's shot caught his leg. He went down hard. Garrett! Zyra screamed. Kraith moved toward him with casual confidence. Zyra launched herself from the ramp. Her tail knocked the weapon from Kraith's hand. Her claws found his throat. Mine, she snarled. They fought viciously. Her tail found his ankle, yanked. He crashed down. She was on him immediately. You don't own me, she hissed. You never did. The mate bond is a lie, she finished. Bonds mean nothing without choice. And I choose to end you. Her claws found the artery in his neck. One strike. Kraith's eyes went wide. Dark purple blood poured between her fingers. The light in his eyes went out. She released him and ran back to Garrett. The plasma burn on his leg was deep. He's dead, she said, pulling him up. Can you walk? You just killed a crime lord with your bare hands and you're asking if I can walk? She half carried him to the transport vessel. Threw Garrett into the pilot's seat, took weapons. Her claws flew across controls, bringing engines online. Hold on, Garrett said. Suddenly they were moving, accelerating toward the rapidly closing outer door gap. The gap was barely wider than their ship. We're not going to make it, Zyra said. Yes, Garrett said. We are. He rotated the ship, threading it sideways through with centimeters to spare. Metal screamed. Then they were through, and the station fell away. Zyra sagged, adrenaline draining. Her hands were covered in Kraith's blood. She was free. Zyra, Garrett said softly. She moved to the medical kit. Kneeling beside his chair. You need a real medical facility, she said. Examining the wound. Later. His hand found her face. Are you okay? Am I okay? You're the one who got shot. You just killed your mate. She looked at her blood-stained hands. All she felt was relief. I'm free, she whispered. Yes. You are. She looked up at him. I choose you, she said clearly. Not because of bonds or biology. Because you came back. Because you made me believe I was worth choosing. Garrett's expression softened. I choose you too, he said simply. She closed the distance, kissing him hard. His hands pulled her closer. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. What now? Now we disappear for a while. Find a quiet station, let me heal up, figure out what comes next. Together, Zyra said. Always. She helped him set jump coordinates, then sat in the co-pilot's seat as stars stretched into lines. Behind them, the summit station fell away. Ahead was uncertainty. Her tail found Garrett's hand, coiled around his wrist. He squeezed gently. They'd killed a crime lord, broken a mate bond, survived against impossible odds. The galaxy would hunt them. Logic said they'd never have peace, but Zyra had learned. Something her species had engineered out, and this human had shown her, sometimes the most important thing was choosing someone who chose you back. Garrett? Yeah. Thank you for turning back. His hand tightened around where her tail gripped his wrist. Thank you for being worth it. As they jumped through space, Zyra let herself believe it. They were worth it. This thing between them was worth every impossible odd. They were free. They were together, and the galaxy could come for them if it dared.